As you recall, we last left Anne and Michelle in a state of disappointment. The first heat press t-shirt was a betrayal. Michelle tried to recreate a beloved t-shirt, but after transferring from one computer program to a laptop and different program, something got lost in the translation. The print was dull and lifeless. Not wanting to test on another dark t-shirt, Michelle abandoned the rose for a newer, younger, and less plasticky heat transfer sheet. But will the color shine through? Join us today on The Edge of Anne and Michelle. So before I turned the Epson 7720 into a sublimation printer, I wanted to solve the color differences from the first transfer heat press. Since the dark transfer t-shirt sheets are kind of crusty sounding, I decided to go with the light t-shirt transfer sheets. The rose design isn't going to work on a white t-shirt because it requires a black background to make the colors pop out. White t-shirt sheets feel better because it deposits the ink on what will become the underside of the transfer sheet, and the clear transfer sheets are just more flexible. For the new design, I decided to make a shirt again for my mother, but this time of her favorite singer ever, the Jolly Green Giant, the Reverend Al Green. First, I picked a photo. Al has had some looks. I don't think the perm period was the best. I settled on this one. I want sharp lines and a limited color palette, so I'm going to go with a drawing of Al instead of using just a photo. I'm using a vector-based program to draw, something like Inkscape, which is open source and free to use but donation-based, or Illustrator. There are many other drawing programs. After opening the photo, the first thing I did was lower the opacity, and then I created another layer. On this layer, I traced the broader lines of Al's face. Then I created another layer and traced his facial features. On hindsight, I would put each feature on its own layer. Eye shapes on one, eyeballs under that layer, lips on another. Next, I filled the hair out. I drew wavy lines to mimic the afro texture. Again, I would suggest each element have its own layer. Hair, beard, mustache. The multiple layers are a good idea because you can lay stuff under each other, like teeth under lips. The overlap looks more natural instead of drawing it all together, unless you're an accomplished artist or have some drawing ability, which I do not. Also, if you screw up and the layer gets too muddy and it's too complex to do an undo, you can just delete it, and you won't have to delete the entire artwork. Also, if you want to draw something in a different way and want to compare the two different styles, you could just turn on and off the layer to compare. For the color, I started off with a base color. Try to get as close as possible, but don't be too precious. You can tweak the color later. You can go down an hours-long rabbit hole tweaking stuff. Just get it down and edit it later. Then I added 2 more layers for shadows, a dark shadow and a mid-tone shadow. On top of that, I added a highlight layer for the highest points on his face, like his nose. At the end, you can adjust the colors when you see everything together. I added Al's name to give the picture some balance. Now it's ready for printing. Okay, the issue of incorrect printed color. I initially thought the color was off on my Rose t-shirt because I created the image on my computer that has a dedicated graphics card, but then I printed it on Anne's computer, which has an integrated graphics card, and I also used a different program. But I ruled this out because the Rose t-shirt was basically two colors, yellow and green. So then I thought it was an issue on how the two different programs interpret the color. This was wrong, but I was on the right track. A camera works very much like your eye. Light hits an object, some color wavelengths are absorbed by the object while others are reflected. With the camera, that light hits an image sensor, which is made up of tiny little photoreceptors called pixels. The pixels don't actually capture color directly. Pixels receive the light in grayscale. The image sensor is tricked into recording color by placing tiny little red, blue, and green filters over the pixels. Those filters do just that. They filter that particular wavelength through to the pixel. Once light strikes the pixel, it's measured as an electrical charge. That voltage is then translated into a numerical value. That numerical value is what is interpreted by your monitor, scanners, printers, and graphics editing programs for you to view. There must be a consistency between all the input and output devices. In 1998, the ICC, the International Color Consortium, was formed. 8 companies came together to standardize colors across multiple platforms. There are more than 61 companies in the consortium today. With this agreement, for example, the color lava red is the same across all devices. Each company engineers a profile, a set of instructions for devices that maintain the constant color across multiple platforms. For our purposes, it becomes tricky with printers. For example, if you have an Epson printer and you have third-party ink and also third-party printer paper, then the color could be off because the printer profile drivers have been written and tested on Epson ink and Epson paper. When you buy aftermarket inks, they will either formulate the ink as close as possible to the manufacturer's ink, or they will provide printer profiles that will compensate for the differences. I have an Epson printer, Epson ink, but third-party paper. I printed my image as a test run, and like my Rose t-shirt, I had color irregularities. The skin was off and the text was not the right color. I have a purple letter that should be pink. The answer is color management. The first step in correcting irregular colors is to allow the graphics program to manage the colors. If you're using the same branded printer, ink, and paper, then you can allow the printer to manage the colors. If you're using any third-party products, like heat transfer sheets or sublimation paper, your best bet is to allow the program, along with a specialized printer profile, to make the correct color conversions. The second part is selecting that printer profile, and there are many different profiles. Since I'm burning through the ink that came with the printer's practice, I decided to select a few and test it out. When you select a printer profile, the program will warn you to turn off all color management options in the printer dialog. I printed some without the Epson Vivid option selected from the printer setting dialog, and they seemed dull. I turned off all other printer managements, but left the Epson Vivid selected. This may have to be revisited when I begin printing with third-party sublimation ink. Here's the printer profile provided by InkOwl, a third-party sublimation ink maker. The one screen left is with Epson Vivid deselected, and the one screen right is with it selected. It seems kind of dull with it deselected. Next to that is InkOwl's 6-color printer profile. Then there's D6500 printer profile, IC for printers, the Adobe RGB and Epson RGB. These two look more like my screen. Next is sRGB. So far, this is the best one. Since this one was so nice looking, I decided to turn on and off the Epson Vivid selection, and it got dull again, so I left it on. sRGB, Adobe RGB, and Epson RGB all looked great, but I decided to go with sRGB. In person, it looks the closest to my monitor, and they have the correct color on the letter. If you have irregular colors, I would get a close-up of the affected area of the image and print it with a couple of different printer profiles. Now that I'm happy with the color, it's time to print and press. I'm using Jolie's for light t-shirt transfers this time. After I printed it out, I decided it was too small for the t-shirt. So I separated the text from the image and enlarged it. I enlarged them both at the same percentage so I can maintain scale. I printed the text on one sheet and the image on another. Also remember when printing with light t-shirt transfers to mirror the image. Next, I cut it out. I finalized the layout on the shirt. I used a water-soluble fabric bender to help me center the image. I measured from the arms here. I used the tag as the center to measure. I pre-pressed the shirt and ran a lint brush across it to make sure there aren't any wayward pieces of lint on the shirt, so I can make sure that it has a secure transfer. I laid the image out. To make sure the letters across the bottom are level, I used some heat transfer tape. I set it at 350 for 25 seconds. In addition to the Teflon that's on the outside of the t-shirt, I put a Teflon sheet in between. Since this is a light t-shirt transfer and the ink is on the bottom side, I didn't know if there was going to be any kind of bleed through. I peeled it off while it was still hot. You might want to wait because it was very hot. And here it is. Pretty good, I think. Pretty good, I think. The blue fabric marker should disappear when I wash it. So to recap on this long-winded video, if you have irregular colors and you're working in an RGB environment as opposed to a CYMK environment, you should let the program manage the color and select the printer profile. In my opinion, sRGB, Adobe sRGB 1998, and Epson sRGB were all pretty good. Thank you for making it all the way to the end, and I hope you come back.